Welcome. My name is Kelly Riordan. I'm a classical musician turned creative entrepreneur, and this is the best platform for musicians that are looking to shape their career by thinking outside the box.
Jessica, thank you for being here. Super excited about this recording today and this podcast episode. I want to start at the beginning of your career journey because I know we have a lot to get through today. So tell me a little bit about how you started your music journey at a young age.
Well, first of all, thanks for asking me to be on the podcast, Kelly. This is great. I'm just really excited and admire your passion to want to support musicians, and I think we both share that. And so I think this is going to be a good interview. This is going to be fun. But in terms of where I started, my brother got into music first, and I remember. Well, I'm from Miami, Florida, and I saw my brother in his marching band when he was in high school, and I saw the drum line, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the coolest thing in the world. I want to play drums. So I was in middle school, and I was actually taking an art class, and then I wanted to switch to band. And then the band director said, nobody plays drums off the bat. You got to play another instrument first. And then I said, okay, well, what can I play? And he's like, all I have is trumpet or French horn. Those are your only options. And my brother was a trumpet player. So I said, I'll pick trumpet. So I busted my butt on that trumpet to get to the drum auditions, the percussion auditions. And then the minute I got percussion, it was like, trumpet away. No more spit valve.
Put it on the shelf, yeah.
But it's done. And now I'm going to just do percussion. And I was 12 years old at the time. So some people might say it's late bloomer. Some people might say, no, it's about right. But it was a Title I school, so we were very limited on resources. But we loved it. We made it work. And as most musicians know, when you're in a band or an ensemble, it's just like a great networking community, that you can make.
Absolutely. Well, and especially marching band. I always just feel when I was in high school that it was a very tight-knit community. You kind of find your home there. Did you feel that way too?
Oh, yeah. It's a little bit harder with drumline because, girls don't play drums.
Right.
And, so it's always a little hard. You got to prove yourself a little more than the guys. But not all the guys are like that, but some of them didn't make it any easier. And then, but it's also at the same time good because you see, okay, there's one girl. All right, I'm not alone. And then one turns into two, and then other girls get inspired, and then they want to join. And then sooner or later, you're up to like 5 girls. And it's like, okay, like we can actually share a room together at a band trip, and not being, it's not like the one drummer with, the clarinet players.
Yes. There's certainly a lot more of us in the clarinet section, that's for sure. Yeah. So did you know pretty early in high school that you wanted to study music, or was that something that kind of happened later in your high school career?
I think it was about midway. I wanted to just play. I just loved playing, and then middle school, I just kind of ate it up, and, you want to do the all county bands and all that. But being from Miami, being surrounded by the water, it was like, I'm going to be a marine biologist. I told myself that, in the 3rd grade. I said, I'm going to be marine biology. That's what I'm going to do. And then I remember doing one honor band performance at the University of Miami. You would do like a tri-county honor band.
Sure.
And I remember sitting in a master class with May Rosario, who was the percussion director at the time. And that was the first time I experienced like marimba playing, like in front of me, and 4 mallet playing. Like I said, because when the Title I schools, there's certain things you didn't get exposed to, and there was no iPhones or YouTube or, any of that stuff. So I'm watching this, I'm listening to this beautiful music, and I'm like, this is great. And then, we go do our concert the next day, and I was very fortunate to get a really cool timpani solo at the end of this wind ensemble piece. I can't remember the name of the piece, but it was awesome. And, when the whole ensemble finished playing, because it was just so awesome, like, you get a standing ovation, right? And everybody stands up. And of course, it's like moms and dads and, relatives, clapping for the kid. But I think that feeling of just like, you were able to, as an ensemble, not me, but like as an ensemble, like you're able to command this response. And I think this feeling of like, oh my gosh, this is a really cool feeling. And it was fun. at the same time, like you took people out of whatever they were thinking of at that moment and just focus on the music, like whatever they were struggling, whatever they were dealing with outside of that concert hall. It was like you made them feel good. You know, you gave them a positive experience. And I was 16 at the time. And I remember being on that stage and I said, okay, I think I can do this for the rest of my life.
Got chills. That is so cool. Oh my gosh, to have a singular moment where it really hits you like that. That's amazing.
It did. And then I realized I am really behind. I've never taken private lessons because I couldn't afford them. And now I knew if I wanted to go to college and study this, and then I still didn't even know what I wanted to do specifically. It was just like, you know, you same conversation most students have with their parents. It's like, I want to study music. Well, what are you going to do with that? And it's like, I don't know. Yeah. And, you know, and I have to admit, my parents didn't push back. They were just more like, well, you can't live here for free. So you either go to college or you get a job and you have to figure it out. And then I said, that's fine. That's better than a no. Right. You know, I was like, I'll make it work.
I will make it happen.
I started supplementing my mallet lessons by giving drum set lessons to like elementary school kids. So I would, during the week, I'd give drum set lessons after like marching band practice or wind ensemble practice, give them a lesson, and then save up my money for that week, and then drive the whole commute between my lessons and back to where I live. It was like a 30-mile commute to get my lessons done at a graduate student at the University of Miami. And this is another thing I wanted to talk about. Like, if I can go on a tangent, I'm going to go on my soapbox.
Please do. Absolutely.
So students are listening to this, or, you know, they're trying to figure out what college to go to. Don't get so caught up on the name as who you're actually going to study with. So when I interacted with Nate Rosario, and I knew that this is somebody I'm going to work with, and his demeanor and just talking, I was like, I don't know who you are. I just met you, yes, and now I know who, you know, he's this world-renowned artist and composer and all stuff. But at the time, as a 16-year-old, I was like, I don't know who you are, but like, I feel like I could work with you. And then I just kind of kept like, you know, making sure that communication was consistent. Like, I remember sending him a Happy New Year email. And, you know, I really enjoy working with this grad student at the time, you know, thank you for putting us together. And just things where it's like, I wanted him to just see my name.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't overbearing, but just like remember. And so when I went into my audition, it wasn't like complete stranger. Right. It was like, okay, you know who you are, but it wasn't, and again, because lack of resources and things, I wasn't even thinking so much of this is, you know, well, it hadn't become Frost yet, but it was like, this is the University of Miami and School of Music. And, you know, if I would have known all that, I probably would have psyched myself out more. And then, yeah, you know, and so I think when I got in there is when I realized, like, oh, this is the University of Miami, you know, and then you're surrounding, you start learning about, yeah. And then my freshman year is when it became the Frost School of Music. And then, you know, it just evolved into what it is now. But I think with students, it's find out who you're going to study with, because I hear a lot of kind of sad and horror stories. Like, well, I went to this school and I had a terrible experience. It's like, well, did you even know you were going to study with? Some students never even see like the program director in their 4 years. Yeah. You know, so it's like, sometimes it's good. Maybe pick that smaller college, someone you can really, really communicate with, and they can work with you because they have a network that's vast and that it could probably benefit you, and they can recommend you for something else. And, you know, I just think we get caught up too much with names and titles and stuff without focusing on like, what is the need as a 18-year-old, 17-year-old going into college.
Well, I think it's getting worse. I don't know if you share this sentiment, but I think it's getting worse with social media. Like, the more we're exposed to this kind of online, I don't even want to call it competition, but, you know, you're seeing really amazing young influencers at Juilliard. And because they're putting out all this great content, I do think it psychs out some of the younger students. And not that it's a bad thing to know what's out there, but also you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to be, you don't have to be at that level going into your undergrad to still have a successful career. Obviously. I mean, we're talking about this right now. You
Right.
started lessons when you're 16. It's okay if you're
Mm-hmm.
behind as long as you are passionate enough to do the
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, and then be open to see where your career is going to take you, because I started as a percussion performance major, and I told myself, like, I'm going to be a touring artist, and this is what I wanted to do. But then the minute I'm in the practice room for like 6 hours, right, I started noticing my attention span. It's like, instead of practicing what was written, it was, ooh, this was a nice chord. What happens if I go here? And I would distract myself. And then, like, I started developing this real love for composition. And then I remember thinking, like, maybe I should switch my major. And so I went and, I had talked to my advisor, and which was Nate Rosario, and he's like, listen, just finish out the percussion performance degree, because it'll still help, and like go to composition, do composition in grad school. And I said, you know what, I'm going to take his advice. And we did some composition stuff in our lessons. And because I had, I was just transparent with that, and it was still hard to do, like, learn my percussion literature and then stay focused and then still wanting to write. But I remember, Nay ended up getting me my first publications, 3 of my solo mallet pieces, by the time I graduated. Wow. So it was like, okay, first of all, I felt like, okay, he believes in me, which is why, like, I dedicated my first piece to him. But at the same time, he was like, you got to do all the percussion stuff, like, you got to perform, but, I understand you have this passion for composition. What was great about Nay is that he, by the time I was a senior, I had 3 published mallet pieces, and like that made me feel really good, because I knew that he believed in me in my composition style, and he supported where I wanted to go, even though I came in as a performance major, that, I evolved into having this passion for composition. And so, yeah, basically what I'm trying to say is, you don't know where you're going to end up. One of the things I try and tell my grad students is, using the analogy of a drum set, is like, the kick drum is your why. It's your anchor. It's what keeps you going, in the sense of your rhythm in life and career. So for me, my why is just music. Like, why do you do what you do? It's like, because I want to support the future of music. Like, can I do other jobs? Yes. Do I like other things? Yes. Do I want to do other things and work in those industries? No. I want to be surrounded and eat, sleep, breathe music. So whatever that looks like, that is my why. And then the other parts of the kit they're my anchor. They're like, my snare is my backbeat. It's my first, primary source of income. My hi-hat is my passive income. And I kind of build as I go. And I have this analogy that I go with it, because it's important for musicians to understand that it's okay to have a portfolio career. It's okay to have multiple streams of income to make your, a living doing this. Success is subjective, but I think in the end, we want to be able to make music with our art. And this is just how it is with this industry. I mean, can you do it with one source? Yes, of course. Do you have to? No. I have multiple sources. You do too. So it's okay to think that, but we're so molded to thinking, like, it's just get that one professor position, or get that one performance gig, or get that one, whatever that looks like. And it's like, no, there's other ways, and kind of just see where your journey takes you. And then mine has shifted from performance to composition to now music business to entrepreneurship. And it's like, I'm just enjoying the ride, because I still get to do music.
Well, and staying open, as you're talking about, and seeing those opportunities, sometimes things come along that you aren't expecting. And because you're aware and you're keeping your eyes open, and the head is up, and you're actually looking around and seeing what's around you, you're not so singularly focused on that one audition, or that one, again, like waiting that one professor job, that you miss everything else that you could be doing, you could enjoy, you could be learning from. It's important to just kind of stay agile a little bit and find those things as they come to you. So, okay, you're in undergrad, and you're balancing some of these things. You're already trying to figure out where the passion is and where you want to spend more of your time. As you're looking into post-grad life, were you really honed in on composition at that point, or were you still trying to figure out how you could make both work?
Post-grad, I didn't actually go to grad school until about 4 years after undergrad. I mean, there was just life things, like I got married, and then, my husband's job relocated us to North Carolina for a bit. So I think being away from my home kind of made me rethink some things. But at the same time, it was like, there's a whole other, world outside of Miami, which I knew, but, unless you actually live it and see it. And, I got to see what that music culture was like up there. And it actually allowed me, because I couldn't find work when I graduated, it was like one of the worst recessions in history, of 2008. So to find work and all that, it was difficult. And again, choices and perspective. I could have been regretful and say, why did I study music? This is terrible. I can't find any work. Nobody told me this. I could have blame shift a lot. But in the end, it was like, this is the situation. How can I adapt and move forward? And I think that's where I started doing more just writing. And I wrote another piece and then got that one published, because at that point I already had a relationship with the publisher. But then I said, okay, I think I want to do this like deeper. I want to do this like more. I want to get more refined in this area. But I didn't know what area of composition I wanted to do. Just like my undergrad, I was like, I want to play music. I just didn't know. So, I went to Vermont College of Fine Arts, which is a great low residency program to get an MFA in music composition. The community was great. The cohort was small. The faculty are phenomenal because they grab them from different institutions and bring them to the residency. So, we had students who worked with faculty who taught at Harvard and Columbia, just because they were hired as adjuncts and one-off. So you had like 5 students with one person. I was fortunate. My first semester, they asked us, what is it that you want to study? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just going to tell you what I'm weak at.
Okay.
And you decide, I'll trust your judgment. And I knew I was very strong with rhythm as a percussionist and, just all of that. I go, but, I'd like to get better at harmony and just voice leading and just, what that looks like. I think I can definitely improve with that. And they paired me up with the jazz faculty. And so I was able to study jazz and write these jazz pieces. And I was like, this is so much fun. And, I would have never expected that. And then my rest of the time I was there, I focused on scoring for media. And then I think that's where I found where I was like, this is what I want to do. And then I was able to identify my voice as a composer and where my music can best be used. And a lot of it was in Spanish television. So I write a lot of like Latin music and that style. So it was, again, very eye-opening. I went in not having this like focus. This is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do contemporary composition. I was like, I don't know. Let's just go and figure this out as we go. I'm just happy to be here. And that's just my perspective was, I'm going to get something out of it. And if I don't, that's on me. And, and I try and tell that to clients and students. They don't like to go to networking events. Like you and I met at NAMM, right?
Yep.
And it's like, if I go to NAMM and not connect with the person, that's on me. Make that effort and, just things like that. I don't know if that's probably a long answer.
No, it's really helpful because as we're thinking about, okay, so if someone's graduating right now, they're trying to pivot in their career, and that's why they're coming here and listening to these things. You have to be putting yourself in the room where it happens. And that sometimes can take some creativity because going to big events and conferences like NAMM, it's expensive. I mean, you gotta get out to Anaheim. It's not a cheap flight. Yeah. It's not a cheap stay. So when you are trying to find those opportunities, you have to get creative and look for funding, look for opportunities. And then when you're there, absolutely make the most of it, whether it's your degree programs, whether you're trying to network with professors or other colleagues. You have to be open-minded in that part of it too. There's a little bit of a theme here in our conversation today, I think, overall. But
yeah.
As you were, looking at your graduate career, and even as you were looking at undergrad, because you're trying new things, you're trying to reach out to Nay in even your high school career and trying to connect with him more and more. Where were you finding that confidence? Because it was pretty gutsy. I mean, from a young student to be reaching out to the professor ongoing, it's amazing. It's really respectable. And obviously he loved it. Like, that's exactly what he wants to see as a student who's dedicated. But I think a lot of students or young professionals lack that confidence. Where was that coming from, or how are you building that up over time?
I think it comes back to like my upbringing. It was so, my brother and I were the first in our family to be born in the United States. So our parents came from Cuba and Puerto Rico, but my mother's journey here and that side of the family, the Cuban side, was very rough. Just historically, they lost everything in Cuba and then coming here. So like my first home was in a trailer park, right? But I didn't know this as a kid. I didn't think this was wrong. It was just home, and I was little, and then you grow up, and then we finally moved into a house. My parents were blue collar workers, no college degrees, but they worked hard, and they always instilled in me that where you are is better than where we could have been. And they told me you're going to have to work hard, but if you don't ask, you'll never know, with certain things. So it's like, very young, I was like, the worst somebody can tell me is no. And as an adult now, and more established in my career, I've learned that no doesn't always mean no. It just means not right now. Yeah. And so if I didn't get into okay, I didn't get, that would have sucked, but I moved forward. There's other schools out there, but I did get in, and I was like, this is great. And so I don't think it was even a confidence of just my skills. It was just more of a want. And I knew that like, this is going to be hard because I'm not going to get that financial support that, my parents said, I like prepaid college, nothing like, I was like, and is very expensive. And I'm living in the not ritzy parts of Miami, and, it's going to be hard. So let me, I guess if I just kind of make that connection, and if they just kind of remember, maybe it'll work. And I think my work ethic and the drive that my percussion teacher, who was a graduate student, she was a DMA student, we still talk today. I mean, it's just fantastic. It was one of those, she could see like, well, Jessica's coming like 30 miles a week. She's paying for her own lessons through giving other, it wasn't that I just had it all handed to me. And that's fine. If students are blessed to have that, fantastic. Like, there were students in my cohort who had that, and they were playing since they were like 2. I was like, good for you. But then I also tell myself, when I would get imposter syndrome or like very low self-esteem and can I really do this? It was, well, I'm here too. And I started late. So, I just kept telling myself that in the end, no one's going to look to see how many years you've been doing something. It's just, can you play the piece? Can you do the job? Yeah. And so that's kind of where my mind was just focused on, that is like, this is where I need to go. And I've been told no many times in my life. I think if I had a CV of my failures and my successes, it would be like 2 times longer. And then there's things you can't control. And I think this is something important that students need to know, and even professionals, I think, to an extent. I wanted to be in this really cool group one time, and they're touring, and they play drums and all stuff like that. And it was just one of these like, this is awesome, I want to do this. And then I was looking at the audition sheet, and I said, I could play this repertoire, I can do all this, I'm ready to go. And then I get to the bottom, and then I realize that I don't meet a height requirement. And so it was like, well, this sucks. So 2 things can happen. I could either like live in that and be bitter and just say, well, this sucks, they shouldn't do that, that's wrong. It's like, no, they have the right to do that. It's their ensemble. I could start my own ensemble, or I can just find another opportunity, like just create something else. And so, I shifted. It's like, well, that sucks. Move forward. I mean, there's situations where I was in a salsa band and they wanted us to wear very revealing clothing. And I was like, I'm not going to do that because, first of all, it's just uncomfortable. I'm playing drums already. And in my opinion, like, I'm thinking in my head, like, that's already pretty sexy, like a girl playing drums. I mean, come on, like,
you got this. Come on.
Like, what's going on here? But, that they didn't like that, and not involved with the band anymore. And it's kind of like, really, like, so like these are realities.
Mm-hmm.
But if I stayed with and I held on to that, then it would have just, I think, stopped me from going forward. I think I would have gone in my own head. We default to the negative in our thinking. And we have to catch ourselves. We have to filter every thought so that way we can move forward.
I'm curious, in your mindset, when you revisit these failures, these little steps where it wasn't the right fit, and it wasn't the right fit because of you weren't the problem necessarily in that situation. Do you look back at that part of your career and think, I succeeded in spite of that situation or in spite of those people that may have tried to hold me back? Or do you look at that and just think, well, that was a fact and I just moved on. It really didn't matter and it really didn't impact me?
Some of it was like, it didn't really impact me. But I can't say with the salsa band, like that one was more of, I think I would have been more upset with myself if I would have agreed to the terms of having to dress a certain way, rather than focusing on the music or what is it. Like, we were doing very good. We sounded great. Like, what's the problem? Like, you're really going to just throw this on us, But, and I see that the band never worked out anyway. So I'm like, that just goes to show you where your priorities were.
Yeah.
That it never ended up going more than what it was, which is a shame because it was good, And so I think with that, if I would have agreed to, I would have been upset with myself, because it's important, I think, to draw a moral compass on what we would do and what we, wouldn't do. And this was advice given to me from a composer for media. And then I think we were just talking one day casually. I was like, how do you know what projects to take and not to take? And, he kind of mentioned a moral compass, and he said, he goes, if I wanted to, I could score a porno and get about $2 million under a pseudonym, but I have to live with that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that makes sense,
Well, and defining those boundaries, it happens over time. Sometimes you don't know the boundary needs to be there until someone asks you to wear a ridiculous outfit that you're not comfortable in. And then that's a new one that you have to add to the repertoire. But it's okay for these things to shift over time. It's okay for you to grow and add to that list of requirements for things too. Yeah.
And the thing about, I was sharing this story with a colleague today that, not today, the other day, it was about writing styles. So like my percussion literature is for that, high school range, I would say, or like lower level undergraduate, like I would say just growing undergraduate. So, as an intermediate, advanced, because I'm very purposeful when I write. I try to keep the format, or the form of it very simple so they can remember it, and just work on polyrhythms, little permutations, whatever. But it's not like these grandiose type percussion pieces or whatever. So we were talking about how there's a market where academics or professionals, they look at this and like, well, this isn't composition. Like, this is elementary, or this is this and that. And they kind of get on their ego trip and judging the music. And then in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I'm making money. I'm selling my stuff. And the reason I was saying specifically with percussion was that there was, at the time when I got into it, there was too easy percussion literature, too hard. There was no bridge that would, like, maybe 5 common pieces that would bridge you to the next level. So I knew if I wrote in that space and find my niche in that space, that it could work out for me. And it has. So I stay in that space. I was like, I'm going to continue to write here because it's a good bridging thing. So then the funny story, speaking about academics, is that this piece, one piece I wrote back in 2008, I ran into someone at the NAMM show. And this is during COVID, so it was NAMM online. And somebody came to my session, and she sends me an email later on. She says, Jessica, my name is so-and-so. I just want to let you know that when I was an undergrad, I played these 2 pieces of yours. And now I'm the director of percussion at this, I can't remember the university specifically, but it's a university in Alabama. Wow. And then it was one of those where, and she uses those pieces for her students. And so, of course, I was like, this is awesome. And I gave her a bunch of my freestyle. I was like, here, just take all these pieces out of your library. But I was like, academics now who used it when they were young and they were building, and now they're the academics. Yeah. So I think if we let people get into our head and like, oh, well, that's not this, it's like, so what? Do you want to be respected by this type of group, or do you want to make money? And my mind was like, I want to make money.
I want to work in this industry. It does take cash.
I want to work.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, too, as we compare this to your story too, having music that you were excited about in high school and in early undergrad, that's what keeps you going. It has to be fun, and it also has to teach you something. It can't just be repertoire for the sake of repertoire. If it's flashy, that's great, but if it's not teaching you and growing you as a musician, then what's the point, right? So having that bridge is really important, because there's a need in the learning progression that's not just throwing students to the wolves on really, really difficult repertoire and trying to force education through something that's maybe a little outside their reach. It's not comfortable. Not comfortable. And I'm sure in my mind, I can definitely hear, I don't know the names of them, but growing up in high school, I definitely heard those same 5 pieces of repertoire that you're talking about.
Right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure you have it too.
Everyone was playing them in the band room at all times. Oh, man. So your composition career, I know you published early in undergrad. How did you get into more publications? Were you just staying in contact with that publisher as you were kind of churning things out, sending them that way? How did your career find growth and really find a groove?
I think it was just, developing that relationship with the publisher, but then also just connecting with other, like, more advanced and professional percussionists, and then, getting commissions that way. And so it's like, hey, we want you to write this piece. I think the most recent piece that I did was for Mallet Lab. And it was great because it was this huge mallet ensemble. And one thing I said, well, I want it to be fun and, just something that, purposeful in the sense of, okay, even though it's a commission here, I can turn around and sell it, and, it can still be fun for the student. And at that same time, the commissioner, he said, I have 2 pearl mallet stations that came out. And, it was pretty cool because all we knew at the time was a mallet cat. And, it's like, well, mallet cat's cool. Then Pearl came out with this mallet station. And I was like, oh, I want to mess with the Pearl mallet station and write something for that. So it was also the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11 flight. So I said, well, let me make like a space piece. And then, let me just use these 2 mallet stations and then just give the students an opportunity to like have fun with that and explore sounds. And so then that piece, worked out, and it was great. And I have that there for sale on JW Pepper, Arise and Go, anyway, who wants to check it out. There's also a solo mallet version with an electronic accompaniment.
Oh, that's awesome.
But so I think building that network, supporting other composers, going to events where I can and just talking to them. But I did do a big gap in writing percussion literature for a bit when I got more into scoring for media and doing like library work and just writing that way. And I will say, and I think this is what I was talking about at NAMM, is just diversifying your compositional approach, like try to be the most interdisciplinary composer that you can be within certain boundaries of like what you can handle. And, I get dance commission. It's like, okay, this is an award-winning dance company down in Miami with going to have a premiere at the Adrian Arts Center, which is the largest center, performing arts center in Miami. And then another performance was at the Gleason Room down at the Fillmore, which is historically another play. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I was just so grateful and humble to have this. And it stretched me because it's a different art form. And it's not just percussion. And it's just really listening to not a director, but a choreographer and what their vision is and working that way. And then I said, let me try theater. see what that's like. And then writing for straight plays, actually, I had more success with that, like more opportunities with that than with dance. And I was like, this is so cool. And then you get the one-offs. Like during COVID, I had a guy who he wanted to make these corporate videos. He used to do these trainings in person to help minorities like build small businesses, and he couldn't do it in person anymore, obviously, because of COVID. So he's like, I'm making this virtual video, and then they have to take a quiz, and I kind of want music to play throughout the slide as they're taking the quiz. And can you just make like loops and stuff like, and I was like, sure, like that's great, you know? And so there's just some random like corporate video virtual test on my portfolio. But through all of it, well, most of it, I was able to keep the rights to my music so I can use it again. So if you're listening, keep the rights to your music if you can, because you can repurpose it for other projects. So yeah, just what makes the most sense? What can I actually do? Sometimes I ask, and then they're like, no, you're not really the person we're looking for. Okay, fine, I'll find somebody else. You're not the only director, composer, or whatever. It's like something will happen as long as you're just being consistent.
Absolutely. Well, and building that network, and it sounds like, obviously you're going to a lot of events, you're putting yourself in those spaces, introducing yourself to a lot of people. Do you think that's how, especially early in your career, a lot of this work was coming to you, is that you were just present, like you were putting yourselves in the right places? Or do you feel like it was more through your affiliations with other universities and programs that way?
Well, I consider myself a late bloomer with a lot of things. I just know I'm a social butterfly, and I like to listen. Like, just, I know it's ironic because I'm here like talking, but I like to just go to places and sit and just listen to other speakers, listen to what other people have to say, because you can get a lot from a person just letting them talk. Mm-hmm. And you can also find out what their needs are, and always come from a position of service. Hey, I really like what you did here, or you're a director, I like this piece. Like, go to a theater show if you've never been to one before, and you're like, oh, I may not like it. Well, do you want work? Give it a shot. Force yourself to like it, or find a play that maybe will interest you. Interest you. And there's a lot of good stuff out there. And then you just talk and say, I really like this, and like, what do you need when it comes to sound or music? Or if you are looking for something, like, please reach out. Just little things like that. And sometimes things go dormant for a while, but then you get an email a year later, I got your information from so and so, and let's have a conversation. It's like, yes, that's great. But I really didn't I didn't go to NAMM at all through my undergrad and my graduate, because first of all, like you said, it was expensive. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't even know of NAMM until like my last year of undergrad. And then, life gets in the way. And then next thing you know, I pitched to write, do a presentation. This was 2019. It was the first time ever I went to NAMM, and I was already in like my late 20s, and people have been going there like 20 years, 30 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind. Same thing with just organizations. I will say that if those who are listening get involved with like professional affiliations, either for your instrument or for like, we have the College Music Society. If you're students still in undergrad or graduate, get involved with GrammyU, GrammyU.com, which is like the collegiate wing of the Recording Academy. And, you can build a network there, get internships, and just see what that world's like. Music Business Association. I just kind of went, I need to be involved with this, whether as just an attendee, a member, or more on the, like servicing now, like I'm on the education committee for the Music Business Association and for the Recording Academy Texas chapter. So it's, you kind of see what's going on. You can see how you can support, students, and hear what the needs are, just kind of either within your region or nationwide. But that has helped me tremendously, because I think the first thing people probably say with Jessica is like, she's just very high energy. She's just very high energy. So I guess that's easy to spot. It's sort of like the high energy one. Okay, that's her.
Making yourself known in that space. Well, and you've
had high energy.
You've had a prolific career, and obviously we'll link your bio in the show notes so that people can go and read through that, because it's kind of fun to read. I was scanning it again last night, and you've sectioned it off in all of these different areas that you are active in: performance and in composition and in film and media scoring, and in obviously now in academia too, since you're already a professor as well. How are you balancing all of that? It is a lot. You've got a lot of irons on the fire. How do you manage that? How do you keep it all organized? You know, in a average week, are there stresses there, or does it feel like this is just my life and I'm comfortable and this works?
Well, I think we all get to the point where our maybe you feel the same way, where it's like what was our passion and our stress reliever, that is music, has now become our stressor. It's like I want to go back to the days where I can just play and just enjoy it and not think about how am I going to make $1, you know. But I just remind myself that why. You know, I think at any point, again, using the, you know, when I talk about using the drum kit, it's just your career and your needs or your passion or wherever opportunities open up, they're going to shift. But as long as you keep a consistent rhythm, like right now for me, it's music business and my business, and working with my clients and teaching my students. So I'm in this like teacher instructor mode right now, which is the strongest. And my secondary was or is composition. And my third is performance. It's kind of in the back. But it used to be at one point where performance was the primary thing. And then it was composition. And then at one point it switches. So it's just kind of what needs to just kind of be shelved for a little bit. Still keep those connections open, still kind of, you know, foster the relationships, but where does the priority land? And like now I'm going on summer break. So it's like I have this dedicated block of time. I'm just going to compose. Like nobody bother me about anything regarding like, you know, clients, yes, you can bother me. But like work stuff, I'm like, shut my brain off. I just want to write. And so, I mean,
having seasons is helpful, right? Like kind of blocking off your time. Do you normally kind of view your year that way? That there's the academic year, I'm teaching at North Texas, that's where I'm focused the most, and then summer is normally composition. Is that typical?
Yeah, I think that's where I am right now, unless the composition opportunity comes during North Texas and it's a good gig. And the thing is with media, like projects come up and then they're like up and down really fast. They're like, hey, we need pitches for this, this, and this. And if you're not, you know, we don't get them within 24 hours, like that's it, it's gone. So then I look and I'm like, okay, can I do this within this block of time? You know, if I can actually do it, then I'll pitch. If not, then I have to like let it go and move forward. But like right now it's the Christmas season. So start scoring your Christmas covers, start recording them, and then start pitching them to music supervisors because Hallmark, you know, is calling for covers. So
yes, Christmas in May, always the best time of year. Very festive. Oh my goodness. How did you get into the academic world? Was that something that you always pictured as part of your career, or did that happen secondary?
So when I graduated in 2008, and I couldn't find a full-time job, I was able to just land a interim teaching gig, teaching just, you know, music, and at a Title I school in Miami, and it was fun. It was middle school. I remember saying, this is the other thing, like, you know, my family says like, you're living Murphy's Law, because I'm like, I'm never gonna be a band director. And then here I am teaching like middle school band, you know. And so I taught that for 1 year, and then it just opened my eyes to like, this is important. And I think you start realizing like skills just about you as a person. And then I started realizing like I'm a very patient individual. At least I consider myself to be very patient. My students will tell you like, Jessica doesn't yell at you. She just gives you a look and just takes a deep breath. And that's how you know she's pissed, you know, because I'm mostly higher energy. So it's like when I compose myself, it's like,
okay, we're in trouble now.
yeah. So, but it's one of those things where I guess recognizing that these kids kind of have a very similar upbringing, some of them worse than what, you know, I had or could ever imagine. It's like, this is their safe haven. And I really enjoy teaching middle school because you can mold them and help them pick a path before they get to high school because usually when they're in high school, they've already made up their mind if they want to be with the bad crew or this or that or whatever. But like middle school, it's kind of like you don't have to be that. Like you can get into music. And so when I see my kids now who were in middle school, like graduating college on their Instagrams, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so old. And then, they stuck to a path, and they were in drumline or they were in bands. Some of them were going off studying. So making the shift. So I started in 2008, and I've kind of always stuck with it. Like just even if I wasn't full time, when I made the shift to higher ed, it was just, you have to know at some point when you're being taken advantage of with things. And it was very hard to make that shift because they could say, well, what about the students? What about the kids? And it's like, if at some point this is going to die out anyway, and we are both going to be out of a job or like out of an elective, out of a job or whatever. So it was hard. I still prefer teaching. The middle school kids are fun. I love my collegiate students. They're fantastic. My graduate students are amazing. They're going to be great, whatever they do, band directors or performers. But the middle schoolers are just funny. They were just a fun group. And, if I can just give them that little glimpse of hope. I remember getting calls when I was teaching higher ed, and some of them were in high school, and they were saying, I think I want to be drumline. This was a young girl. And I go, why do you want to leave? And she's like, because I keep getting picked on. Like the guys are just really being tough on me for no reason. And then I go, I can relate. I get it. I go, but would you feel happy leaving for that reason? That these guys push you out, you'd give them exactly what they want and you'd be unhappy. How much do you love playing? And she's like, I love it so much. I go, then it's worth sticking it out. And she stuck it out. And she's glad she did, she was able to graduate, because what happens? Just people move on, and, you can't it's hard. It's easier said than done, but when you have just outside elements coming in and trying to mess with your passions and your judgment, like things you want to do, like, is it worth it? Why are you going to give them that authority to determine what you should and shouldn't do? Because the minute you say yes to that, you're also giving them the authority to say when to stop. Okay, you could stop feeling this way. Like, you're giving these complete, either strangers or people who write comments on social media or just academics, to come into your world and your space and have that control over you. And I'm like, I'm not that person. Yeah. Like, no. Don't control me. It's not like that. So.
Well, and working in that space too, as a teacher, as an instructor, and as a consultant for your clients too, there's a balance of, we know this is out there. Like, we know the bad stuff is there. We have to acknowledge it, and we have to have those conversations with the people that we're instructing and supporting. But we also have to get them through it. So what are some of the things that you tell your students to help them work through that? Is it just really refocusing on the passion, or are there maybe some things that you tell yourself internally that you relay to them on a frequent basis?
Yeah, I mean, I really just tell them to focus on the no doesn't always mean no. It usually means not right now. But by like paralysis, right? Or overanalysis leads to paralysis. And we know that. And then that's the problem, is that we overthink things sometimes, or we think of the worst case scenario, and we're afraid to fail. And it's like, the world still moves on. You will move on, okay? But I think it's also important to recognize priorities and where you are shifting. I mean, I'm not trying to knock people who are like, you need to have that one goal and hold it there, but I don't think it's clarified sometimes the way that it should be clarified. Because I'll give you an example. I was talking to, for my business, I give a lot of free consultation calls. They just call me up, let's talk. I don't pressure. I'm not like trying to push a scarcity model on you. Like, if you don't sign up now, it's like, look, call me when you're ready. But if this doesn't work for you, you may tell somebody else, and then I get a client from them. So I had this one person, I said, what is it that you want? And this person said, well, I want to be like, something along the lines like, I want to be the first African-American female composer to win an Oscar. And then I respect that. That's great, and I wish you all the best. I go, well, what happens if the Oscars end tomorrow? No more Oscars. What if the Grammys end tomorrow?
Yeah.
What if all these things that we hold on a pedestal, they're gone? I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm a voting member for the Recording Academy, and it's great and it's awesome listening to music. I go, but if you don't win a Grammy, it doesn't dictate like how good you are. And she couldn't answer. And so this is what I'm saying, is that we create these idols sometimes, rather than focusing on the why, which is just music. It's like, if she would have said, I want to be like composed for as many feature films as I can, and I want to have a success, and stuff is like, okay, yeah, that's good, it's great. It's not saying the Oscars aren't achievable, but you're putting your goal into the hands of complete strangers who can decide. We're done with the Oscars. And people say that'll never happen. Yeah, people said a worldwide pandemic would never happen. Yeah, and look what happened.
We really don't know. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's just focusing on not creating idols, but again, I guess identifying that why in that space of like, what's going to bring you the most joy? Because happiness is temporary, but like joy is what, no matter how tired you are, it gets you up in the morning. When you're actually in it, you're like, man, I'm so glad I did this.
Yeah. Well, when you have that goal, like you're using the Oscars example again, I think the other thing that we run into is if we hold that up, then when you achieve that goal, let's say you do get there, then what? Like it happens.
Absolutely.
And it's just over. And I've heard other people speak about this, other musicians especially speak about this, that you reach that crowning achievement that you've been working for your entire life, and then it's almost kind of a letdown because life afterwards goes right back to normal. And now what am I working towards? How am I going to top that? What happens after? So, I mean, that seems so silly because, like, there's such a small number of Oscar winners every year, Grammy winners every year. So it feels like that could be something that you're working towards forever. But in reality, like, if you're not doing it for yourself and your goals and metrics that you can hold near and dear and control a little bit more, it may not be everything you had dreamed of when you get there.
Yeah. Or you had a very rough process to get there, and you may have some more regrets and burn bridges in the process, or compromise your moral compass with certain things. And it's like, these are things that this deep self-reflection is important, because you have to live with that at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, we kind of alluded to your consulting. Have you always felt like you were entrepreneurial? Is that something that you've always been working towards, or did it kind of happen later and surprise you?
It happened later. And I think it came upon this idea that there's a need out there for musicians. And when I looked at, like, curriculum, this is not good. Even back when I was teaching middle school, I'm like, this is not good. Or the way this is being taught, this is not right, and it just kept going and learning. And I'm like, even in higher ed too, there needs to be a shift with how things are taught. And I'm not saying that just as like a music business person, but it's more of like, we eat, sleep, breathe our instrument. And then we graduate. And then it's, now what? And it's like, that's not taught.
Practical application. Yeah.
Exactly. So I started seeing this more and more, and I decided, I want to provide a service. And like, I don't really, some people call it coaching, but I don't. I call it consulting, because I'm actually teaching you a skill, like and I'll give you an example. Like when I launched my business in 2020, and of course, it's a great time to do it, right? But it turned out to be such a good time, because and COVID, I'm not downplaying like the severity of it is so sad, but like with crisis there's opportunity. And I had all these musicians who were incredible at their PhDs, DMAs, played all over the world, win all these competitions, and they're like, I don't know what to do. And you're looking at them like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, they're like, I don't know what to do. Everything's gone virtual. I don't know tech. I don't know how to record myself in my own home. I don't know how to do it. And then you see this kind of depression and panic all at once. And so what my company does is we go in and fill the gaps of the career to take them from what they know to another source of income. So during that time, we knew virtual choirs were a thing, doing live streaming concerts were a thing. So just working with clients, like building this up. And I have this one superstar client who she would do choral arrangements for her church, and she was working toward an Easter Mass. And she worked with me, and she did it so fast because she was so driven by like, I need to get this done, and I need to keep my career going. So I will learn how to use a DAW, and I will learn how to use these plugins and work and take the time to do it. And then she even, put the whole virtual choir together.
That's so cool.
And it was fantastic, and a great testimonial too. So that is why, I look, because sometimes they'll ask like, well, I don't know what next steps are. So this is where the consultant role comes in too, because it's like, well, have you thought about pursuing this route in this area? Like, these are companies that, they look for skill sets like what you have. I've worked with clients who they're trying to get into higher ed, let's say, even at an adjunct level. And they're like, I've never written a cover letter for music specifically. I don't know how to do it. And then we talk about like, well, there's an AI machine sometimes that your application goes through. So this is how you want to tailor this. So that is like really what my company does is more on that consulting and teaching role. And through it, there is going to be coaching. I am going to tell them like, it's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, but no doesn't always mean no. No means not right now. And giving them that support. But I want to come in I want to make it clear that I'm a guide. I'm here to guide you in your journey. You're the hero in your own story. I'm just your guide. And let's just keep going and see where it takes you. And then, new things evolve and collaborations happen too, which is really cool because you get to meet so many musicians. So contract reading too. I got this contract. I'm not sure what to sign, or this and that. And I saw one the other day. I won't say the company or whatever, but they wanted like 50% of the earnings of this one individual to give private music lessons at the studio. And it was like, oh, but they're nice people. This is what they're telling me. And I was like, so there's a lot of nice people out there. I go, but they're taking 50% of what you would give in a private lesson. And they're like, oh, and I asked, how much is a half-hour lesson? Oh, and a half-hour lesson is $50. I go, you're going to give them $25? How far do you have to commute?
You could do a little marketing yourself and get the full 50. It's shocking what we're willing to give up sometimes.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure you know this because you talk to people building your lesson studios. And it's one of those things where I was like, how far do you have to drive to give these lessons? And then what's your commute back? What's your gas? This and that. And then you start breaking it down. I'm like, 50%. They go, well, I don't want to burn a bridge. I'm afraid if I say no. I go, here's the thing where you got to go in and sell it. And so I'm telling them they have a need. They're looking for your instrument because they don't have someone to teach it. You have the upper hand here. You don't have to get greedy. Well, you can definitely say, I'm not giving you 50%. You can take 10 if you want to go that extreme and see what they say. And they'll probably end up at around 20, 25% they'll settle. But either way, you get more money back and you're bringing them a clientele, or have a clause in the contract that says after 6 months, the rate needs to drop, or, you need to drop down the percentage, but people don't really think about that because they're just looking like, here's the work, here's money, take job.
Yes.
And it's like, well, there's always room for negotiation. Something doesn't always have to be money, but ask yourself, what do you value more, your time or money? I like to value my time. My time is worth a lot to me. I can always make more money in other ways, but I can't make more time.
Right. Well, and this really interesting mindset for musicians that, if you compare to a non-musician working in the corporate world, when they get a job offer, they typically are looking at that and there's going to be negotiation. They're not going to sign the first draft. It's very rare. And they're going to come back and say, well, can we do this? Or I want these benefits, or I have more PTO? And there'll be some negotiation around that contract before we finally settle. Or they might sign a letter of intent and then get a different offer and then still bail on the first company. These things happen a lot. But a lot of the companies we're working for in music, when we're starting, sometimes these contracts, for example, it might be a mom and pop music shop. It might not be a fully developed business. And so there is more room for negotiation because it's a family run business and they are nice people and they do want to work with you. But then also you don't just have to take any opportunity. It's not like just because I'm in music, like I have to beg for every single dollar that I can possibly get and take anything and everything just to stay in the industry. You can still advocate for yourself. You can still be a professional. And I'm sure this is so frustrating for you as a music business professor, because a lot of times in the universities, not only is this not getting taught, but sometimes historically, I think we are evolving, which is great. A lot of times the music business or the entrepreneurship or these topics are taught at the university level by an academic who's never experienced them or lived them.
Yes.
And so you have the experience and you're actually teaching it, but that's not always happening.
So, and here's the end, and talking about negativity and outside voices, right? So, I've gotten them, not at UNT, where I'm at now. I mean, if people think it, they think it, but oh well, I'm already here. But like, if you were to look and like you saw my bio, it's like I'm teaching in an MBA music business program, and I have no MBA. So it's like, how does she get the job? She doesn't have the experience and stuff like that. It's like, I was like, no, I do. I just don't have that particular degree. And I think deep down, like, if we can make the same argument, and this is what I throw back when people try to challenge that, it's like, oh, you're a DMA, you're a professor of, we'll take clarinet just for you, right? Professor of clarinet. And it's like, oh, so you did undergrad, grad, master's, and all performance, and then you did DMA, all performance, and then now you're teaching at a collegiate job. How many teaching classes did you take?
Yeah, where's your
using that same logic? That same logic. Did you take childhood psychology? Did you take classroom management? Did you take? I go, you didn't take any of that. So before you start pointing the finger, just because you have the degree doesn't make you a good educator.
Oh yeah, well, we see that too.
Yeah. So I can say though, when I look at my, it's not on my bio, but like I taught in the public school system, and Miami-Dade County was the fourth largest public school system in the nation. I have a teaching certification there. I have a national certification for experiential education. So it's all put in because the business principles, it's like we can read a book, we can live it, we can experience it, but to actually teach it and to teach it and how to apply it accurately, it's a different skill. You try and tell a student, play this excerpt. It's like, well, I can't play it. Well, just play with more energy. And it's like, well, but I just can't play it. And if you don't know how to communicate that, this is where you start to fail. So one of the things my company has done is work with building curriculum for smaller schools. Like we did a school in Fort Lauderdale, and we did one in California, where a choral teacher had to teach music production. And it's like, okay, well, let's build this together, but let's also try and incorporate some business skills, career talks. So that way these students at a young age can already think and know that. And this is the problem, that we can change higher ed, but it doesn't help if we're not getting majors. The talks need to happen already when they're picking up an instrument, because then they can go home and tell mom and dad, hey, I can go and study this music. And they think, oh, you're not going to make it as a performer. And they say, no, but I can study music engineering and get computer science and music and build synthesizers and go work for Roland or Softtube or all these other countries. But if it's not being talked about, and again, partially it goes back to the educators weren't taught that.
Right. They don't know.
So
how are they going to bring it up in band class, because they went to school for education and now they're educating. That's this little cycle that we go through. Yeah.
And then it goes back to like, one of the things this upcoming fall, like I want to try and connect more with the Texas schools here. This is my first year here in Texas, so I was like just getting my bearings. But it's like I want to go and talk to schools, but I know that if I try to say, can I come and talk to your school for free for about 30 minutes to an hour during fall season, the answer is probably going to be no. It's marching band. Marching band.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, we could talk about the different careers that you can have working for nonprofits and BOA and DCI and all this other stuff, and letting these students know that these are jobs you can get involved with. But, I respect if the band director says no, I'm like, all right,
Well, and it's a challenge because the amount of the industry is gigantic. It's bigger than any of us can even possibly begin to process. There are jobs in the industry that I learn about something new, I feel like every week, something that is an actual bona fide position in the music industry that I had absolutely no idea. And it's a fun place to work. It's a fun way to meet people and learn what they're doing. But also a lot of these jobs end up getting taken by non-musicians because we're not aware. So at the corporate level, even sales, for example, would the band director, would the music store rather deal with someone that also happens to play the instrument, or would they rather have someone that, you know, doesn't but has an MBA and has a sales background? They want someone that speaks their language. And so those positions do exist. It can keep you in the industry. And also a lot of times these companies know that you might be gigging on the weekends, that you might need some flexibility to go to events or to, you know, to take an audition. And they're game for that. So sometimes staying in the industry might not mean teaching. It might not mean performing. It might also mean taking a sales job with Sweetwater or another company like that, which again, is it everyone's first choice? Maybe not, but is it better than going and taking a desk job at a dentist office or something? Yeah, it might be a little bit more aligned with your values. So staying open-minded in that regard too. And I'm sure this is something you talk to your students about all the time, that music business is not what your current frame of understanding is. It'll constantly be growing and expanding.
Absolutely. And then even jobs where you do have a music degree, I think we still stay within a music industry pocket and we're like, this is where I need to live. But like Peloton hires composers.
Yes.
Peloton people, you know, so it's like we get called like, this is where we need to stay. But it's like, well, I can go work for Peloton, or I can work for another like workout company that needs music here or stuff, or for their products. You know, so even just sound, you know, like now there's a whole video game market. I mean, you know, I have a composer friend who works in for, oh my gosh, what's the name of the company? It's one of the big gaming companies. And she started out with like just quality assurance for audio. Like she just listens to the audios and stuff. And she's just growing little by little. I wouldn't be surprised with time she'll end up being able to like score or do sound design for these games. But she's like, this is the industry I want to live in. I love video games. I want to live in this space. If I need to take this job first, I got my foot in the door. That's all I care about. And she's doing amazing things.
Yeah. We were talking to a colleague at NAMM that we were with some friends, and he happened to walk by and got into a conversation about contracts he's been offered but unable to take. So obviously I'll shield names and things due to conflict of interest, but for auto companies that are, they need just the tiny little sounds, or like when we look at electric vehicles, they need the noise as the car goes by to alert people that the car is actually there, or like the backup sounds, these tiny little things that in our daily lives we hear all the time, you know, the chime on your iPhone, that someone had to create, and they might have gone through 250 iterations on that sound before it came to be. And there's a whole team working on that. It's not just one person. It really is a lot bigger than you can conceptualize, which is really cool. Yeah. There is a lot of opportunity there.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Now, I know you mentioned before we started recording today that you've got some new initiatives that you're working with in your company. Tell me what's next. What are you guys doing right now?
Well, I mean, we're still taking on clients, and we want to be able to do that. Like, I mean, I think with most musicians, we just want to be able, like, if we could do it for free, we would, right? That's kind of the thing, right? We're like, if I could play music free, we would, right? But we got to eat. And, you know, so one of the things I launched now with NIZCO Music is something called the Beat Shop. So it is a merch shop, but it's merch with a purpose. So the impact model is buy, get, give. So somebody comes and buys a product from our shop. No matter what they buy at whatever price, like, we're still going to use funds from that to help support that I can go and give a talk to a low-income community or like a school district. And it's like, that school doesn't have to pay me. It's like, hey, we're going to go, we're going to talk, let's see, let's meet, let's do this, you know, and bring that exposure to them. But if they buy minimum packages, right? So if they spend $45 at the shop, then they get a free Zoom call in a group session. And then, you know, I can just cover what it is that they want. You know, you have problems with contracts. Let's look this, you know, I'm not an attorney, but the jargon is pretty the same with certain things. And it's kind of like, these are things you just want to be aware of. Or if you have tech questions, like, it's just you get this for free, which is hugely discounted than if you were to buy, a package doing a one-on-one, like take advantage of the group option. If they spend a little more and it goes up, and I think our most expensive, but if you break it down, it's really, very frugal. It's if they spend $1,000 in the beat shop, them and 9 of their friends, then so like 10 of them can be on a call. So if you have a band or a chamber group or ensemble, it's kind of like split up $1,000 amongst 10 people, or whatever, or buy some things here and there, and then you all get this free call, and then we get to sit here and actually go down specifically what the needs are. I'm all about like customization. I'm not going to sit here and lecture. It's about what is it specifically you need that you see a gap or it's hurting you from moving forward. It could be like your booking strategy is probably not working, or your mapping of like, why are you taking a gig here and then driving across country here when you can do this route or something, so it just, they could check out that. It's at nizcomusic.com/beat shop. And it also explains our model, why this started is I started noticing a decline in like music hiring. I've been seeing consistent like tenure track positions, tenured faculty losing their jobs because of like program closures at the higher ed level. And so this is another thing. I mean, I know it freaks people out, but it's like nothing is permanent, not even tenure. And it's like, no, don't say that. It's like, but it's the reality. And I'm on a tenure track, so I get it. But this is why we need to have portfolio careers are the way to go. And that's what I keep trying to preach with my company is let's figure out what skills you have so you can make multiple sources of income. So now you have tenure track faculty who they lost their job. What do they do now? What are their next steps? Well, I can provide a service for that at no cost to them because it's being supplemented to the beat shop.
That's awesome.
So please, everyone, check it out. I don't think this is going to be up by Mother's Day, but we actually have, it's fine because I am going to leave those items up, but I have a cool moms collection.
Oh, cool.
And I'm going to have a cool dad's collection. So right now you can, I wanted to I didn't want to make it instrument specific. I wanted to think of just other things that don't get as much credit. So I put like cool moms are music engineers. Cool moms are, choir directors, or cool moms are band directors, or, cool moms are composers. That one's a winner. Like someone just bought a mug the other day that said that. So, you can pick up a gift for mom who's a musician in your life, and then you'll be able to do it for dads and Father's Day. And, but we have other items out there, and, just any sale will help just fund that.
That's awesome.
And bring that support back. So that way musicians, they just don't give up hope on what it is that they want to do. Because I think the first stage of learning is you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So if someone brings it to your attention, then it's like, oh, I didn't know that. And that was like really my entire music career. I knew nothing. But because I was just open to learning, then I said, okay, this is good. This is how we're going to do it. And I think that's really important. And that was one important thing. The thing that really sealed the deal, I said, I'm launching this, is because the very middle school where I learned how to play my first instrument closed down the music program. And, it's already in a Title I school district, and all of us were devastated. We went on this, like, Facebook was like blowing up with just comments of, really? So then I try to see, well, did they supplement it with something else? And of course, everything is STEM, which I get it, but why didn't you keep a music technology program then and keep STEM that way?
Yeah.
Why can't we build it on this side of things, still using music and supporting these initiatives with science and technology and engineering?
That's
but
what students want to learn. They're all on TikTok. They want to learn beat making and electronic music. Yeah.
Just saying,
Yeah.
So that's what we want to do. So if you're listening and you're like, check it out, share it with your friends. If you want to sign on as a client or use for schools, I've had people, I tell them, hey, use your professional development funds and then come and do a talk, and either virtual or in person, depending, where it can happen. But like you and what you're doing with your podcast and your business, like I'm just here to serve. Because if we stop supporting the future of music it's going to be COVID times 10
Yeah.
when in terms of like the music is gone. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really am excited about everything that you're working on. And, when we talk about the contract discussions and all these different layers of the industry, there's so much unknown to the average musician. So the advocacy and the services that you're providing are really important. And I know they're really helpful. So it's fantastic to hear how this all came to be. Thank you for sharing all of that. I know we've talked about your career and work a lot. So before we wrap up for today, we'll just pivot really quickly. Outside of music, what else do you like to do in your personal life? What are some things that bring you joy and help balance things out for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I love my dog. I love dogs. My dogs are my logo. I just had a student now create an AI generated version of my logo with another dog and headphones. And I was like, this is so fun. Thank you for doing that, you know.
Gosh.
But I love animals. I think at some point I'll make a dog and music shirt for my company, just throw it up there for all the dog lovers. But no, I love to travel. So like my husband and I, we always try and travel as much as we can. Yeah, just hanging out, you know. I mean, it's hard now because I'm not in Miami, but I love scuba diving. And so I can't really do that as much in Denton. But it's all good. It's you know, I'm like just open to meeting new people and just talking, and this is why I like to do the free calls, because you meet one musician and you know, who knows what it can spark to. So
Absolutely.
So yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm just high energy and low key. That's it.
Well, I really, really appreciate your time today, Jessica. This has been a ton of fun. Thank you for sharing your career story and your journey and some of your personal life too with all of us and some wisdom. Obviously, I'm going to encourage everyone to check out Jessica's website and all of our information. We'll have everything linked in the show notes, but she's got a ton of great resources and obviously the Beat Shop too. So we'll have all that available for you guys. Thank you again, Jessica.
No, thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate it. And thank you for what you're doing, and that may continue to grow strong and just continue to bless musicians on the podcast and through your company.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.